Tonight I have the privilege of introducing Kathryn Orvis. I first met Kathryn when the Director of Special Education in Lafayette, Tony Skaggs, asked me to provide a consultation for her son Wesley at one of the elementary schools. Wesley was struggling at school and displaying difficult behaviors. And my job was to observe Wesley in the classroom setting to see how strategies were being implemented with him and to find out what was and wasn't working so he could achieve some success. Katherine Klingerman was present during the observation and actively interacting with Wesley, trying to implement behavior mapping, visual supports, and reinforcement as the autism consultant for the district. Together as a team with the school staff, we problem solved what evidence-based practices should be implemented to help Wesley start to see more success at school. Kathryn Orvis and Katherine Klingerman will share their full story in this presentation, Building Partnerships with Schools, how to be an active member of your child's team. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. That was a nice introduction. Thank you.
It was a great introduction. Okay.
Okay, so here's our agenda. We're going to talk about our partnership story, give you some tips on building your team, some tips and strategies about case conferences and participating in those, how to build a partnership, working together during easy and hard situations, and then moving forward.
Okay, our partnership story started when Wesley was in 3rd grade, I believe, just about 9 years old when they first met, and the two of them hit it off. And it was born out of necessity, trust, and patience. Kathy Klingerman and I have been able to be honest with each other, even when it's hard to hear. We feel like understanding each other's perspective is really important and key to helping us navigate our relationship. We're always respectful and kind, and we always keep Wesley, the child, front and center.
Yes.
Okay. All right, building your school's team. What you'll notice tonight is a theme where we keep reminding you that the most important person is the child. They have a voice, and especially in what affects them in everyday life in the school. As a parent, you are also a voice for your child, especially as that child is learning to self-advocate. As they learn and mature and practice, they need you to continue to be your voice for your child. Your school team should involve your child's teachers, administration, and service providers. So everybody that interacts with your child on a daily basis should be a part of this team. And if they're not all there, it's not going to be able to function to its best ability. Some other people you might have on your team are external advocates or parent volunteers, parent support systems such as InSource, or other friends or family members that might help you navigate as you build your partnership with the school.
And I know we all have very busy schedules, and getting the whole team connecting to one another through whatever communication you're doing at that time, whether it be a case conference or an email group or whatever. If that team isn't complete, I encourage you as a parent to be brave and to pause whatever that interaction is, and say, you know what, I'm glad that we're here today and we can do what we're going to do, but we're missing some key players. And so just make sure that you know it's important, and it's okay, and it's the right thing to do if you say we need to pause because we're missing some key players on our team.
Okay. All right, who makes up this school team? Who should be involved? Well, we already talked a little bit about how your team is made up of a bunch of different people. Teacher of record, it might include your special ed co-op school representative, generally the primary teacher, and then somebody from school administration is also part of that. All of the service providers, and it can be a long list depending on the child and the case, And then others can sometimes provide written or verbal reports to the team as well. So sometimes paraprofessionals or other teachers who aren't attending, especially as you get to middle school and you have multiple subjects, sometimes those teachers will send in written commentary or suggestions for how to help your child.
Mhm. And oftentimes, paraprofessionals' schedules don't allow maybe for participation in a team, but it's really important if you have a paraprofessional working with your child to get that information. When I'm involved with a particular team, I always make sure that we have that because they're the ones that are doing some of the minute by minute types of programming things that need to happen for your son or daughter. So it's really important that you have all of that, whether it be verbal or written or some kind of participation through in-person.
Okay. So as a parent, sometimes it can be and feel overwhelming to be just you or you and a partner in a room full of people who maybe their end goal isn't the same as yours, or maybe it is, but it's overwhelming to walk into a room of people sitting around a table and be the one, be the parent. So sometimes bringing somebody with you to help take notes, to help listen. I always say listening without emotion, somebody to listen who isn't quite as emotionally connected with what's happening with the child. Sometimes they can have community connections. They might have suggestions for services. And it can be really helpful to have that other voice in the room as appropriate for your child. And then it's also super helpful to have an external support team. So somebody outside of this case conference that you can talk through ideas and suggestions with, such as other parents. And I talk about who's your tribe, who use your network and use your connections to help support you so that you feel confident when you start to work with your school team.
I have a few points to add to this piece of the presentation. I've sat around the case conference table for thousands of hours, mostly as a school person, but I've also sat there because friends or family members have asked me to come and be that extra person for them. And I've also sat at the table for a child who had pretty significant 504 plan. I have to tell you, and I'm sure it's not news to you, but being the parent in those meetings was by far the hardest role out of all three of those roles. It's hard to sit and listen and take in all the information, especially when it feels really personal, because raising your child is a very personal thing. So I just want you to understand and know that if you're feeling scared, that's okay, and that's normal. If you're feeling anxious, that's okay. It will get better, it will get easier, and so hopefully some of our tips today will help you with that, but just know that you're not alone. Second point is I've worked with lots of advocates over the years, and when I hear that a parent is bringing an advocate, I'll honestly say the first thing that I think is, oh no, is something going wrong? Have I missed something? Have I not been doing what I need to do? That's my own personal reaction. But what I've learned is that that advocate or that extra person or that partner or that family member that's coming is really actually going to help things in the long run. They're bringing fresh set of eyes. They're bringing a new perspective. And so after that initial response of, oh no, have I done something wrong as a school person, I try to make sure that my next response is, that's okay. We've got something to learn. I'm going to listen and we're going to move forward. Kathryn and I have worked together hundreds of hours, many case conferences. And one of the things that I loved about her right off the bat was how she started a case conference. So she would always start with some kind of icebreaker. In the beginning, it was chocolate, some of Wesley's favorite chocolates she would bring. She'd bring a photo of Wesley. Now that we're, 6 years in, we don't really need an icebreaker, but as new people join our team and old people leave as he transitions through settings, she still does those things, and those things are really, really important to how that case conference starts. And another thing that Katherine's done, and I've tried to repeat this with other families, is she always sits among the school staff. If I walk into a case conference and I see school staff on one side and parents on another side, it visually tells me that maybe we're not all feeling comfortable with each other. We haven't started our collaboration yet. But Kathryn comes in and she sits among the team because she is part of the team. She and Wesley are the most important parts of the team. So that those two things right away, the icebreaker and where she has sat over the years, has made a huge impact on the outcome and the comfort level of those meetings. What do you think about that, Kathryn? Anything you want to share?
I think that's accurate. I think you have to be really brave, and even if you're not feeling super confident, you are portraying that confidence and your ability to advocate for your child, and it's scary. I be very honest. It's scary and it's hard, but it's a really important job. And I think as long as we keep the child child front and center, we can work through the challenges that we might be facing.
For sure.
So why do you need such a big team? Why do we have this team of sometimes 15 or 16 people sitting around a table to try to work through a case conference for a child? First of all, many sets of eyes and many brains together help with innovative problem solving. So you can strategize different ways to help your child, and you bring in resources from several different aspects and different viewpoints. And every member of that team is an expert in their field. And so each person brings their expertise, that specific information that might be the key to trying something different with your child or working through a challenge. Often the lead teacher or the teacher of record is the coordinator and is the source, should be the first point of contact for you, but that should be a conduit to communication with the whole team. And so one of the things that we do is we have generally a whole email list with the whole team. So especially as we were starting out early on in the beginning, so everybody knew what was going on. And it may seem silly to have even people that have minor roles with your child on the email, but sometimes somebody will chime in and say, oh, I know about this, or maybe you could try this, or oh, I saw him doing this in the hallway, or whatever it might be. And so again, you bring in all of those expert people to try and best bring their ideas and willingness to help your child.
Yeah, and I can't think of a team that I sit on that's smaller than 10. Every team that I'm on is large, and a large team has communication challenges. And like Kathryn said, if you have a communication group started, then those accidental omissions won't happen. But also knowing who's your contact person, who's going to send out that weekly email if that's what the team has decided, who's going to be that person that does a really good job organizing information. Sometimes it's really nice to designate that person, especially in the beginning, as you're working through some issues. And I have just found that I've learned to embrace large teams. Autism is complex, and our programming is complex and tiered with layers. And we do need the brightest and the best people programming for your child. So I've learned to embrace that. And once we figure out the communication issues, then the large team just brings nothing but benefits.
Absolutely. So what are some things that help make this partnership work both inside and outside of a conference? Because you may start in a case conference, but you're communicating across that whole school year. And so communication is first on my list, but communication is also last on my list. I bookended with communication, but some other things that are helpful are trust, which is earned, and respect, and keeping in mind what is best for the child. That is your common goal. Sometimes people need reminders, like you get bogged down in the detail and it's like, oh, hey, just remember, see this cute kid right here on this picture? He's why we're struggling or why we're seeing such great success. I'm trained as a scientist, and so I'm all about the research-based information and best practices for what might work in terms of programming. And the conference, the case conference, is just one piece. It's a piece that is a chance for everybody to come together in a meeting to build a relationship and programming to help your child across the whole school year.
And hopefully you haven't had too many unpleasant case conferences. We've all had meetings about our children where things didn't go or weren't said the way we thought that they might. But remembering, like Kathryn just said, it's one piece. You can have a case conference that doesn't go as well as you planned, but wonderful programming. They don't always reflect or correlate with one another. So keep that in mind as you move forward, and make sure that we're always going back to what does research say? What does research say? You should hear that word more than anything in your case conference, because everything we do needs to be grounded in research and data. So knowing that's the framework that we build our program on, that will help you with your partnership. And you can expect quality work inside and outside of the conference.
Absolutely. Okay. So as noted, communication is key. As a parent, you have the right to communicate with all of the child's teachers and providers, and you should. Again, we go back to building some sort of communication method, and often it's an email list, and sometimes there'll be some other daily communication pieces that come into play there. But your goal is working towards what's best for that child. And so I always also will, when I talk with other parents, is don't wait to ask for help. Problems are going to happen. Issues are going to come up. Sometimes, as hard as it might be, you have to take a step back and give the benefit of the doubt and try to work through and think about where everybody's coming from and what we're trying to manage. How you work together to solve those problems is what makes an effective team. It's really about problem solving. And that's how I approach it, is how do we solve this problem? And how do we work through this issue? And how do we do it together as in the best way for the child?
Yeah, problems will happen, right? I mean, we're going to be programming, through high school. So when problems have come up for Wesley, something that Kathryn has always done and continues to do is when she sends out an email to the team, she'll give Wesley's perspective on what happened. But she'll always say, what are the other perspectives? What else was going on? What did Wesley not see behind the scenes? I know there's more to the story, which gives us an opportunity to focus on problem solving versus getting stuck in the story. And it's a wonderful way to frame things. And Wesley's perspective is Wesley's perspective, and presenting it that way has helped me understand him better, which ultimately just leads to better programming. So that's been really key, to know how Wesley thought an incident went. And there's always a huge line of reality in that. Like, what he says is how he perceives it, and then we fill in some of the gaps if there were any gaps that he didn't see. The second thing is, I just strongly urge you, as Kathryn has, not to wait if you need help. If I open an email and within the first few lines I read that you've been frustrated for a long period of time, I know that we've got some backward programming problems to think about, and that's fine. Absolutely. The minute I know, and I'm grateful to that. But the sooner you let the team know, hey, this is what's going on, it might not be a big deal now, that is really helpful, because we can start to program and problem solve and talk about it and move forward before it becomes something that might be harder to work through.
Yes, I agree. Got to go the right direction. And so, again, we come back to what's best for the child. And in problem solving, it's helpful to break it down into smaller pieces and try to see things from the child's perspective. And that's exactly what Katherine Klingerman just said, is trying to see things from Wesley's perspective to try to understand the bigger picture and be able to break down the conditions into smaller pieces that got to where you are, whether it's a success or whether it's a challenge. And again, keeping in mind, how am I going to best serve this child?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all this data, what are the behaviors, when they happen, why they happen, will be inferred from that. But what happened before, what happened after, all of that data are critical in making decisions for your child. So if you sit at a case conference and you have a lot of anecdotal information, or you're in an email conversation loop and it's a lot of anecdotal information, I think there's value in that. But I also think that you're going to need data. So how often are things happening? And what's nice about data is, one, it takes the emotion out of things. Two, you can interpret it, analyze it, apply it, and then you know if things are working. So looking at what's best for Wesley through that data lens is what we've tried to do over the last few years, for sure.
Yep. What are some ways to improve communication? So a few things that have worked for me are having conversations before the case conference, talking with the teacher of record, talking with your co-op rep, if that's the case, before the IEP meeting, talking through what your parent concerns are, talking through what some goals might look like, so that when you come to the table, you can maximize your time that you have together with the whole team. Collaboration takes time, and so there's a lot of time and effort put into building a team that's comfortable communicating with each other and being respectful and able to best problem solve and best help your child. A few other things that we've done is we have done written communication logs, like a daily communication log. And that's a two-way street, in my opinion. And what I found to be really helpful is, as well as, if I don't know, if I'm going to be an active participant of this team and I don't know what's going on at school on a daily basis, I can't problem solve at home, and I can't be an active functional member of the team. And so I feel strongly that I have to know what's going on in school, but it goes the other way, and the school needs to know at least a little bit of what's happening at home. You know, that Wesley didn't sleep last night, or something, you know, his grandparents arrived to visit and he's all excited, or, you know, he's not feeling well, or he's off today, so that the school staff knows, so that they can work through and not be blindsided by crazy behaviors, perhaps, if that's the case. So working through that is really helpful. We've done regular teleconferences with a team or a subset of the team. We started when things were very challenging. We started once a month having teleconferences with the team, and then we were able to go to once a quarter and once a semester. And now we sort of just are doing them on the fly as we need them, as he's doing very well. And get a written plan so both sides are clear on what's been said. So we talk about putting things in writing. That's so much so that both sides know what was been said and both sides understand and are clear on that communication. Again, you're trying to eliminate miscommunication and trying to work through how to best communicate amongst each other in a respectful and kind way.
Mm-hmm. And along those communication lines, a couple points here is I've had to make some adjustments in how I communicate. I feel like we're all kind of 24/7 connected with each other, and some people have their phones near their beds and they They ding if they get something. Some people don't do that. I'm an early riser, so it's not uncommon for me to shoot off, 5 to 10 emails before 6 a.m. But if I know I have a parent that I'm sending an email to, or a teacher or a principal or whomever, and my email is going to ding because they have their phone near their bed, I schedule that to arrive at a later time. All of those little small things you do to communicate in styles that match each other, they matter. They just show respect and kindness towards each other. Those are some tricks we've learned along the way. The second thing is, if you are going to do a communication log, I highly recommend them, especially for younger children. But I also know that there can be some issues that come up with a communication log if there isn't thought put into what information is being collected. I am not a fan of a spiral bound notebook that just has lined paper and people just write narratives about whatever. I have found that somewhat turns into a journal or a venting or just a whatever kind of communication system. And I think purposeful communication is better. And sometimes we do checklists. We target behaviors that we're working on in the behavior intervention plan. And those are, data is provided on a daily basis on those kinds of things. Kathryn and I have done a variety of systems over the years. We've tried Google Doc, we've done paper things, we've emailed things. Now Wesley gives his own information, so we don't need to do that anymore. But we were always tracking behaviors in terms of his IEP, and we were also tracking successes. What went really well today? And those are usually in the areas of things that we're working on, social skills and being flexible and keeping your work organized. And so I felt it was really important because I knew when Wesley got home, Kathryn was going to look at that binder and they were going to have a conversation. And she needed to know all the awesome things that happened at school that day, not just about the 5 minutes where we had a work refusal. That's not a complete picture of her son. So be careful in the communication log you set up. And if you have one set up and your child walks in the door and the first thing you think is, I don't want to read that. That's stressing me out. I'm going to have a bad night because of that. Just ask to redo it. Do it in a different way, or say, I need a break from it. I've had some parents say to me, that communication log stresses me out so much. When my child walks in the door, I need to start fresh with him. And I say, absolutely, absolutely. We don't need to do it. So think about how it impacts you and what you can do to problem solve that if it's not meeting your needs.
Excellent ideas. Let's see here. So we sometimes have bumps in the road, as we just sort of had an example of that. Collaboration and working together sometimes really feels hard when the child is struggling. And so that's where we need to focus on common ground and successes. I'm doing your slide. I should stop talking and let you do your own slide.
It's our slide.
It's our slides, but this one's yours. So let me switch back to you.
Oh, okay. Well, so like just Kathryn said, there are bumps in the road. And I always kind of laugh to myself when things aren't going well. We have to really be good collaborators. And when things are easy, we're like, oh my goodness, pat on the back. We're so good at collaborating. Well, it's harder to collaborate when your child is struggling. It's harder to collaborate when your student is struggling. You have to really find a way to find common ground. And I learned this from Dr. Pratt. The best place to start are on successes, what's working well. And that's one of the first things that I will say. It's one of the first things we should talk about. What is going well for this child? And you build on those successes. Other things that are helpful is set agreed upon agendas when you have a meeting and stick to the agenda. So often what I do is when we have a meeting coming up, whether it be a staffing, a case conference or whatever, I will send out an agenda to everyone that's attending, and I will say, give me revisions. And I will update and revise that agenda. Then I will send it out again and say what needs to be adjusted. And we work on it until we get agreed upon agenda. And then we stick to it. We print it out and it's right there. Get more information. If you feel like you're missing a piece of your child's behavior, academic progress, social progress, ask for more information. That's easy, and that's something that you have the right to do. Be open and understand that true collaboration is messy. You have to be able to listen and take on other people's perspectives and understand them before you can move forward. Couple other just tips. Wait a day or send an email to yourself or have a partner read it or a best friend read it. If you're really, really frustrated, and I've done this before, I've typed up an email and I just put a pin in it for a minute. For me, and I have a parent who shared this idea, she just sends the email to herself and opens it with fresh eyes so that she can see, is this email going to move us forward? Or are we going to get stuck in this email? You absolutely have a right to vent. You absolutely have a right to be frustrated. You should make those frustrations known. But understand that if you send an email that is only full of frustration, or is only being sent to vent, it's going to take some time away from programming. So think about what that email's purpose is. Draft it. Have somebody else read it. Send it to yourself, whatever system you have. Reread it and then decide if you need to edit it. Of course, you can post anything you want to any social media site, but again, understand that if you post a frustration or a concern on a social media post, it's going to take a while to kind of dig out from that. Like, what was the frustration? How can we fix this? How can we problem solve? It's an indirect way of getting programming moving. It's better just to be direct, in my opinion. And here's another thing. I have sat in hours and hours of case conferences. I've sat in 5 hours, 6 hours, wonderful meetings, wonderful. But last 10 minutes, we didn't quite know what the plan was going to be for tomorrow because we were talking 6 months from now, 1 month from now. And so when you have a bump in the road and you don't exactly know what's going to happen for your son or daughter the next day, you need to ask that. What's the plan for tomorrow? Make sure everybody understands what the expectation is. What do you want to add to that, Kathryn? I know you and I have been down this road.
We have been down this road where we get to the end of the meeting. We're like, hey, what are we doing tomorrow? How are we managing this in the very immediate short term? So yeah, I think keeping in mind, the agendas have been super helpful. And I do the same thing with emails. I write them and rewrite them and let them rest, because sending a frustrated email might make you feel better in the moment, but long term doesn't always solve the problem. And that's a hard skill to learn, especially when you're really frustrated and your child is really struggling. Those are really hard things to do. I don't want to imply that those are easy things to do. It really is very difficult, which is why you need your external support team to help you through some of those times. Okay. We've alluded a few times already to research-based information or collecting data for effective problem solving. And, we talk about best practices and research-based and evidence-based practices. That's where we start. And you as a parent can do your own research and your own homework and learn about what might work so that you can have an educated conversation with the people at the table about, hey, I read this book, or hey, I read this post and they were trying this thing. What does that look, what might that look like for my child? And it may not amount to anything, but it helps you as you're gaining information for being an active part of that team and trying to figure out what might help us solve this problem. We talked about collecting data. And how are you going to know if your programming is working if you're not measuring and tracking data? And as a scientist, this, of course, is how I function. And not everybody is always on board with this. I can say, let's collect data. And they all look at me sometimes like I'm growing horns out of my head. But again, how do you know it's working? or not working? Where are the breakdowns in trying to solve that problem if you don't have the data? And sometimes you need to bring in experts from outside of school if needed. And that's where we've used the Indiana Research Center for Autism with Wesley in the past.
Mm-hmm. I have the best story about this. Kathryn, of course, as a scientist, did her own research. I think Wesley was in fifth grade, and he was struggling with some classroom behavior expectations. And Kathryn did her own research, and she came to me and she said, "What do you know about Ross Green?" And I said, "Well, I know a little." And she said, "Well, I think it might be something that might inform some programming for him." And I said, "That's wonderful." So I went to my director and I said, "I need to learn more about Ross Green." Simultaneously, Dr. Pratt had asked autism leaders around the state, "What do you need to know more about?" And I said, "Oh, thanks for asking. I'd love to learn more about Ross Green." And Ross Green came. The magic of Dr. Pratt and IRCA, there was Ross Green several months later. So I went to my director again and I said, "Ross Green is coming and I think I need to learn more about him and his philosophies and his approaches and his assessment pieces to help Wesley." And she said, "Great, let's send a group." And we filled a car and we all went and learned about Ross Green. And she was right. Kathryn was right. There were some pieces from what Ross Green taught me that day that still we use in his program. So you know your child better than anyone. Go out there and figure out if you feel like there's some programming pieces missing. You know, it's not insulting for a parent to say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" In fact, it was one of the best first collaborative opportunities Kathryn and I had.
Excellent. So there's a lot of what ifs that come up as parents work through these relationships, and the answer I always will say is to keep trying. All of these what ifs, what if communication's not working? What if you don't feel like you're being heard? Is coming back around and saying, "I don't feel like I'm being heard. I feel like what I'm saying is being, not taken for what I'm trying to give you." And so sometimes the team doesn't work. Sometimes you don't agree with the school team. Sometimes the school team doesn't agree with you. And it's just working through and keeping that problem solving mindset and the child in the forefront to keep trying through. All of these what ifs have solutions, and some of them are really hard. What if you come to an impasse and you need to have mediation of some kind? We went through mediation with Wesley and came out the other side, and it was one of the hardest things I ever did as a parent. But they're survivable, and they will get your child what they need and get you through to the other side so that the child has the best chance to be successful in life.
Yes, keep trying. Be brave and keep trying.
Yep. And remember that the focus is the child. This is a picture of Wesley with his buddy Abby. And you remember that we're focused on trying to help this child become a productive member of society, and whether they're going to finish high school or whether they're going to go on to do something else in the later years. Wesley wants to go to college, and what is it going to take to get there, and having those conversations and really thinking about the fact that your child can be a contributing member to society and can really make a difference for the people around them. Problems and challenges arise, but you have to be brave and you have to be that strong voice for your child. Okay, all right, and our last one. Anything else that Kathy you want to throw out there? Or we?
No, I'm just I'm pleased to speak with you. It's hard being the parent, but thank you for coming today. And yes, remember your child's a focus and be brave, and yes, it will be fine. Keep trying.
Excellent. Thank you.